Welcome for another talk. You caught my introductory prayer, and I think some people realize that's the theme of the Lenten talks, Closer Walk with Thee. Today, my guest is Dottie, and she gave a tremendous talk this week at the service, and I'm going to turn the mic over to her with a few questions. You have a mic there, too, if you want to hold one. Love the handout you did with the mirror. How did you come up with that, the mirror?
Well, I think one of the themes of Lent is to take a look at ourselves
Good.
in the mirror. And so to me, we're reflecting on a lot of things during Lent, and especially ourselves, because if we reflect on ourselves and we see things in ourselves that maybe need to be changed or tweaked or,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
that helps us to get in touch with ourselves. And if we're in touch with ourselves, then we can be closer to God, is my thought.
That is a good thought. And it's also a good reflection of where we are in life and where we could be. Maybe that's what brings us to church and giving us more emphasis on, okay, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. But like it was said, how to follow, to come closer. What do I need to do?
Right.
You had something in there you said you wanted to enlarge on, the wolves?
Yes, I didn't get to that. I didn't want to go overboard. I felt like I was talking too long as it was. So, but there's I believe they call it a parable from the Cherokee Native Indians.
Mhm.
And I saw it years and years ago, and I always loved it. And so I wanted to put it in there. And I don't know if people are familiar with the story of the two wolves, but as the legend goes, there are two wolves that reside in each of us. One is a good wolf, and one is not so good a wolf. And they represent the things in us that we struggle with on a regular basis. I mean, there's goodness in all of us, and then we have those little things that aren't so good. And so the good wolf represents things like generosity and forgiveness and kindness and caring and I don't know, I can think of all kinds of things. Benevolence, empathy, hope, serenity, humility, peace and hope, and love. And then there's the other wolf who, represents anger and envy and greed and arrogance and unforgivingness and inferiority and resentment, false pride. So in the story, there's a little boy whose grandfather is known as a very wise chief.
Okay.
And he comes to him and he asks him to tell him a story. And he tells him that, did you know that two wolves live right inside you? And the little boy said no. And he told him about the two wolves and the goods and the evil wolf. And the little boy looks at him and he emphasized, the chief emphasized the fact that they're both strong. There's forces there that are in conflict. And the little boy said, well, which of the wolves wins, grandfather? And the grandfather tells him, the one you feed.
Wow.
So I think that says a lot, because it's true. I mean, we hear that all the time. If you feed on something, you're going to, so hopefully you're feeding on the good things in life. And
I remember in the 60s, you are what you eat.
Oh yeah.
And the Beatles put it backwards. What you eat, you are. And then one of their songs caught that.
That's funny. Yeah.
So mentally, physically, spiritually, what are you eating? And are you eating enough? Or are you on that funny diet.
Yeah, well, I got a book. This is funny. I saw something, I think it was on Facebook or something, and I'm a sucker because I'd like to lose weight. So I found this cookbook,
Okay.
and it's God's cookbook. And I got it in the mail, and it's all these wonderful recipes, but they're really rich, like heavy cream and all
Ooh,
this stuff and pancakes.
okay.
And I'm like, whoo, and this is how God wants you to eat. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
Want you to get there closer, quicker. If you
Quicker,
eat that and get your cholesterol
all
and everything.
high,
Yeah,
then
that
you'll
would do it
be
too.
meeting God sooner
Oh,
than we
gosh.
think. But
Okay, we were talking each week about the stations out there. Have you done the stations?
I've done well, the first time I got here a little late, but I made a point to try and participate in each Wednesday's
Mhm.
stations. And I especially like it outside because you're communing with nature, and it's just a very sobering.
hmm Do you have a favorite station or one you dwell on more than the others?
I think I'm not sure of the number. I'm sorry,
That's
but
okay.
I think it's the station where he talks to his mother,
hmm
and she's, obviously in distress, and he tries to make her feel better. And yet
Right.
he's the one that's, walking toward
Wow. His death.
death.
Okay. And you said there were, you had a youthful experience with religion, a path you were following.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was very young, about 6 years old, I believe I saw Jesus.
Okay.
I was playing with a neighborhood friend, and we were pretending that we were going to heaven.
Hmm.
And we were, I don't know, running around the yard. And where I lived, it was set off the street, and there was a big hedgerow of big evergreens. And on the other side of these evergreens, I saw what I believe still today to be Jesus running through that little path
Right.
behind the evergreens. He had a blue robe, he had a beard, he had sandals, and I saw him, and I ran into my mother, into the house, and I told my mother I had just seen Jesus. And my mother said, "Dear, are you sure you saw Jesus?" I said, "Yes,
Ooh.
I'm sure I did." She says, "Do you think it might have been a hobo?"
Oh,
I
geez.
said, "A hobo? No, Mom, he was Jesus." No one believed me in my household except my grandmother, who
Oh.
was living with us at the time. She took the time to ask me about it and asked me to tell her what I'd seen and how he looked, and you know,
Oh,
and it still makes me well up when I talk about it
sure.
because I do believe I saw him. But I was always curious about religion. I don't know if that's why. I even drew a
Mhm.
wonderful picture as a little kid of Jesus, just
Oh,
that same image that I
okay.
saw, and I've lost it, and I'm so mad
Well,
because I would love to have it and frame it, but I was a kid and I lost it somewhere along
okay.
the way. But anyway, I was always curious about religion, so I had a lot of friends that were Roman Catholic. I would go to the Roman Catholic Church. I I grew up and was a cradle Episcopalian, so I always gravitated back to the Episcopal Church. But um, my father was a choir director at the
Oh, my.
Methodist Church, and I sang in his choir at the Methodist Church, so I was exposed to that way of worship. And then when I moved to the South, I experienced some Pentecostal type
Okay.
um,
Music.
service, and it just makes you aware that we're all so unique and so different. You hear people criticize how someone worships, and I've never embraced that thought. I've always felt as though um, we should all be open to one another, and we should appreciate, the differences, because even in religion and in spirituality, we all look and have a unique relationship with Jesus or with God and how we perceive him. So, if he wanted to clone us, he would have cloned us and we would have all thought alike.
right.
And then I started thinking, wouldn't it be horrible how chaotic life would be if we were all
The same.
the same? We'd think alike, we'd look
Wow.
alike. Oh, how boring. But anyway.
I'm thinking that when I think my mother was a twin, and how boring they had to split. One ended up in Ohio, one in Florida, and every time they were together, I couldn't figure out which one was my mom.
Oh my
I ended
God.
up in the wrong aisle in the grocery store or something, and I'm like, how do they handle it? They handled it by
They were
going to opposite
identical.
sides of the country,
So they
but
were identical.
and they
Wow.
loved the twins celebration in Ohio, Twinsville, and they would do that stuff and dress the same and look the
Oh
same,
my
same
goodness.
makeup, same hair,
Oh
and that would be very confusing just between the two of them.
wow.
And they said, "Oh, you go to this city, and there's like quadruples that are identical." And yeah.
Wow, isn't that
It's
amazing?
cloned. Well, look out.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get off of that. Something else I was supposed to ask you too. Left my sheet down here. Lent. How are you doing with Lent? What's anything popping?
I've not, I think I've taken on more during Lent than giving up something. I usually try to give something up that I
Mhm.
really like.
Mhm.
And I have failed to do this time. I think I've taken on more, and I'm having a struggle with my discipline. I feel like I'm not disciplined enough, and I wish I could become.
Yeah. Well, way back when I was in college, the seminary, I actually got on the track team. Our school, we had a split school Olympics, and I ended up a miler. And yeah, the one thing about a miler is what happens the very last 1,000 yards or so, 1,000, you sprint. So we've got 10 days left of Lent, and I'd like to see some people out there sprinting to this final week and Holy Week next week, and double up your efforts. Be like the 440 runner, the relay runner. You're in the stretch now. You gotta
The
make it,
yeah.
man, because that puts it all together. No matter what you've failed at or whatever the last 6 weeks or so, you've got a chance here to just
redeem yourself.
yeah, and come in, finish the race, as Paul
Yeah.
would say. Get in there and do that.
Right.
So, any last message?
Hmm. Just, yeah, like you say, it's around the corner, the resurrection, and that's
Yeah.
the hopeful and joyous time, and just prepare yourselves for
Right.
that.
And we have a lot of special services. Check the Sunday bulletin or the online bulletin. Starting with Palm Sunday, we're going to have a donkey parade.
Oh yes, that's
Yes.
exciting.
And
Yeah.
then a brunch afterwards. We're going to do Easter egg hunts on Easter for adults and the children. We're
Okay.
doing a special service on Thursday for the Last Supper. And of course, we're doing the Passion on Sunday, but we're also doing a service with 7 preachers on Good Friday. And it's one of those come and go as you can and as you wish. If you can come late, you're not coming late. It's from 12 to 3, and you come in anytime, stay as much as you can. I mean, there are people who have obligations, maybe back and forth to work and shopping, all that stuff. You've got to get that done. And you get a chance to come in between 12 and 3. And I think that'll be a unique service for anyone.
And then we have the Easter Vigil.
Oh, Easter Vigils. Great.
Yes, and that's
Fire
Saturday.
and baptisms.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll see how many we get baptized this year. All right. And thank you again for watching. We are going to do this Lenten program one more time, and I'll have a special guest there, and we'll try to sum up what we've been doing or attempting to do, and you'll see some changes in the future very soon, I hope, because the equipment is here.
Oh, cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's see if I can.
Thank you.
Now, this is why one thing I have to have is an assistant to get the music back on. Here we go.
Back where it was.
All right, these are marked. So walkabout goes down here. That little tiny